Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Really excited today because we're going to be talking with Andreas Welsch, and we're going to be talking about how to bring AI into the business. I think it's probably the number one subject everybody is talking about. So Andreas, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people find you?
Perfect. Tim, thank you so much for having me. I'm super active on LinkedIn, so if you look me up there, you'll find me. I have a YouTube channel as well, where I share episodes of my own podcast and live stream What's the Buzz? And you can also read my weekly newsletter called the AI Memo on intelligence-briefing.com.
Brilliant. A person that is highly qualified to talk about. So first of all, let's set the scene. So give us your view about and demystify for us about what AI is first and foremost.
That's a great question. There's hardly a standard definition for it, but I think what it boils down to is software that can think, reason, perceive, and act in ways that are similar to how we as humans act and behave. So disseminate information, to make decisions, to give you proposals based on large amounts of data.
And what do you think are the biggest misconceptions about it
I think one
in
of
a
the biggest
business context?
one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's a silver bullet. Right? I see lots of leaders these days being inundated with messaging, with information from different vendors, from institutions, from everybody basically who has an interest in selling some kind of AI or selling services around AI. Come and I can revamp your business model. Come and we have AI built into our apps. Come and we build something custom for you. And by the way, this will solve all of the problems you've ever had. And while that might look pretty nice in marketing material and might get your investors excited, it also leads to a lot of confusion if you're a leader, because whom should I actually trust? What can I actually do with this? And that's one of the biggest misconceptions. It works really, really well on narrowly defined tasks. For example, take sales, scoring leads. Will this lead become an opportunity? Will the opportunity become a deal? Or writing, drafting your outreach and personalizing that to the person that you reach out to, and do that at scale. So things that we haven't been able to do before, but it's hardly a silver bullet for any and all questions that you've ever had.
So we've had a comment already. Beth Alexander, I'd like to say that she's a friend of mine, and she said that she's interested in the discussion. Beth, if you've got any questions, please ask them, because if anyone's qualified to ask questions, then you sure are, Beth. So thanks for that. So what should a company do when we're being, as you say, inundated with stuff about AI? What as leaders should we be doing about AI?
To me, step number one is actually going back to your business strategy and thinking about what is it that we are looking to achieve over the next 12 to 36 months. Right? Are we looking to grow our revenue? Are we looking to cut costs? How can we serve our customers better? And then think about, well, what are ways in which we can do that, and how we can measure it. That's the important part as well. So you know where you are and where you're actually going, and if you're on the right track. But start with your business strategy. What are the goals? How can we measure it? And then how does technology like AI help us get there? That's the best way to get started. Unfortunately, I see a lot of organizations do this the other way around and say, well, we have this great technology. Let's look for a problem that we can solve with it. And that is very, very rarely the route to success, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I see these things where here's a technical solution, and if you do it, you'll get these amazing results. And we all have one customer that has amazing results. What we've seen with Klarna, haven't we already, where they said we've got rid of all of our customer service agents or something like that. And then they went, oh, actually, AI is rubbish. We actually need to recruit all the customer service agents.
Yes. Yeah, and that's to me an example of optimism, of being overly optimistic, but then also failing fast, and also not being afraid to say, hey, we tried this out. It's actually not working in all the ways that we thought it would. So we need to rethink how we do that.
So I was at an event last week, and there was a panel session, and one of the people on the panel basically said, if you're going to use AI, especially when you're going to do pilots, because you're going to be doing it first of all, do something boring. Don't do something which is customer focused, because you will regret it. Is that something that you would agree with?
I think in many cases it's advantageous to learn within the own four walls of your business, because for many businesses still AI is a new kind of technology, and not just from a technology point of view, but also it's a new way of working with software. Right? If you think of things like machine learning, where we make predictions, where we look at patterns, people who've used this hammer have also bought this toolbox type of things. Demand forecasting as another example. It's about hard data, and it changes the way people are working and have been working. And now if you fast forward to things like generative AI or agentic AI, where we're able to create information, summarize information, and the systems are right most of the time based on how they're built, but sometimes they can go off the rails, so they say something that's inaccurate or untrue. Now we're delegating even more autonomy to these systems. It's definitely advantageous to try this out within the own four walls of your business, and then see how can we actually scale this and roll this out.
So Paul Thornton, who's actually been a guest on this show, says AI is a tool that should support the strategy. I think we'd agree with that.
I love it, absolutely.
Yeah. So Andreas, do you think that should we start small and do some sort of pilot first, or what do you think?
So, starting with pilots has the advantage that you can test it in a controlled environment. You're not rolling this out to everybody in the company all at once. You're not looking for moonshots where nobody's ever solved this problem, and you can learn in a very very well defined scope and environment. What's important though is that you need to scale out of these proofs of concepts or pilots into production, and you need to think about this from the very beginning. How do we actually do that? Otherwise, your pilot will remain in the lab, and it will die on the vine, because once you roll it out, you realize, well, the world's actually a lot more complex in our business. There are more languages, there are more business units, there's a lot more variation. Data might not be as complete or as clean as we thought it would be. So just being mindful of that already as you set out to conduct these pilots is really, really important, and it will help you scale as you move further in your journey.
I mean, you mentioned data there. I mean, data is so important, isn't it, in terms of getting, because lots of work has been done on unstructured data in most on structured data in most organizations, but it's unstructured data, isn't it, that seems to be the issue right now.
So about 80% of the data that a business processes on a regular basis is unstructured. And to me, that's mind-boggling, right? It's the digital documents, the PDFs, the scanned invoices, the bills of lading, the contracts, and what have you. It could be called transcripts in a customer service center, and so on and so on. So working with that information, I think, is critically important. Now, unfortunately, I would say data hasn't been one of the topics that has lately gotten a lot of investment, right? When everybody talks about AI and agentic AI and always wants to do the newest things. But by not focusing on data, it means you build your skyscraper on toothpicks that are very fragile and very brittle. So you need to have a solid foundation. And yes, that means you need to invest in data and have clean data and fresh data. So what I've seen a lot of organizations then do is, yes, we do an AI project, but as a step zero in this project, we need to get our data in order so we can build on top of that and build that skyscraper.
So one of the things that I guess many companies are grappling with is that, and we kind of saw this with the when people started getting their own mobiles and devices, especially Blackberries, for example, where we had bring your own device. Now, as consumers, we can go out and use ChatGPT or Gemini or any AI version. And we've got this situation where in a corporate situation, we need to be making sure that they're not putting confidential information into what is a public product. So how do we balance this when we've got, well, we could just block people from accessing ChatGPT on the desktop, but how do we make sure that we're giving people access to AI and giving them an environment or a sandbox that they can use where they're not using the publicly accessible pieces of AI?
So like you said, generative AI tools are a lot more user-friendly, a lot more accessible today than previous generations of AI have been. So anybody can, use it on their phone. As long as you have an internet connection, you're good to go. So that means that your employees in your business, they are very likely to use AI already, whether that is on a company provided device or on their own device. So you would actually want to have them use your company approved device. So you have a lot more control over, what tools are being used, what information is being shared. And I think there's a mix of initiatives that companies and leaders should pursue. One is provide awareness or first of all, provide a guideline of how do we want to have our users behave. What is the kind of data we want them to put into these systems? What is allowed, what is permitted, and what is prohibited as well. So maybe personal identifiable information about your customers, credit card information, they should never go into ChatGPT. Same with your own information, by the way, as well there. And then how can we raise that awareness? And there could be a mix of trainings, upskilling, hands-on workshops. How do you actually use these tools and use them in the right way so you get good results very, very fast without exposing our company to additional risk? And as a third one, there are technical measures where at the point between your network and the internet, you can have content filters, or you can scan what are people actually entering in ChatGPT, what is being sent across, and then if it's something that goes against these policies, block these individual prompts from going out.
And what mistakes do you think people are making, and in your experience?
There are a couple. First of all, leaders who completely shut down access to generative AI tools. We're not doing this, or we're just waiting and seeing if this is really a big thing and if we need to do something. You can be certain that your employees are already using these tools and will continue using them, even if it's on their own devices. So unless you're fully locked down and you ask people to leave the phone at the door before they enter the building,
we'll just use our mobiles.
That ship has sailed. We saw this with things like bring your own device in IT about 10 years ago, where companies like Samsung and Apple got consumers so excited about the devices that they went back as employees to their IT department and said, why do I still have this simple phone? I need a smartphone to do real work. Right? Similarly, we're seeing this here as well, but I think there's a lot more shadow use or rogue usage of AI. So just accept it and deal with that reality of how can we provide safe and secure access to these tools to our employees. It's not only just about the concerns. As a leader, you also need to look at the opportunities. What does it mean if my employees have access to these tools? How can they be more productive? What else can they do faster, better, cheaper that they're not able to do just relying on human labor and human brain capital, if you will?
And so during the preparation for this, I went and looked at your podcast, and I would recommend anybody who is watching this to check your podcast out. It's an interesting thing. When you what I'm interested in is that in terms of the people that you've interviewed, is there a particular theme that's come out, or is there anything that's particularly surprised you in those interviews that you've done?
Yeah, so by now I've done more than 85 interviews over the last 4 years. I summarized the first 60 in the AI Leadership Handbook that I published last fall. And in the work for it, I saw that there are 9 common aspects of AI leadership. So things that people do in organizations and aspects they consider if the AI projects succeed. And that starts with understanding, first of all, what is happening largely in the technology space. I mean, there's so many headlines on a weekly basis, sometimes even on a daily basis. It gets pretty busy,
daily, doesn't it? Yeah.
Right? and I would argue a lot of it is noise, or it's individual companies fighting for relevance in the marketplace. So yes, we've got something to, or this week we're the best, before they get overtaken by the next one the week after, right? So
Yes.
it's the media cycle and the media circus, but largely being aware of what is happening in technology. What does it mean if software can now create information, summarize information, translate information, maybe generate code, even if you're in a software business? What does that mean? And number two, who owns that topic in our company to drive that transformation, to help bring AI into our business? So many larger organizations have a central leadership role, a chief AI officer, a chief transformation officer that specifically looks at this topic and holds everything together for the company, from looking at technology, working with stakeholders across the business. What are things that we should be doing? Where can this technology help us? To working with HR and learning and development to drive enablement. So number two, it goes on to building a strong culture of innovation. Yes, this is important, right? We need to change, we need to adapt, we need to be open and receptive to this kind of change, to this new way of working where we delegate tasks to software, even more so than we've been doing thus far. And how do we communicate also internally with our teams? How do we bring business and technology stakeholders together to understand where things not going so well today in the business? Where does it take longer? Where we're not getting the information we need? And how can, on the other side, technology help us improve that? So shaping that joint understanding, and then always, building systems responsibly. If everything is based on data, there are biases in that data inherently. How we view the world, depending on the industry we're in, the kind of data that we get about our products and customers and so on, and then all the way to security, making sure that we're not exposing confidential data by accident, or that users cannot trick the bot to do something malicious or something unintended.
So it's about there needs to be very clear lines of demarcation in terms of the organization and who is responsible for whom. I guess that most of this would take place within. Usually, it's a technical person that would be involved in this.
So I've actually seen different backgrounds, and in some companies, it's a leader who has a lot of experience on the business side, who's worked with customers, who's worked with product, with manufacturing, who really understands the business in and out and the market, and then looks at, well, how can a new technology like AI help us improve these processes and improve the way that we do business. That can work very well. For example, Schneider Electric out of France has taken that approach. Many other companies, to your point, are mainly looking at technology backgrounds when they appoint leaders into these roles. But the key is, whatever your background is, by the way, that's a great opportunity as well. You don't have to be a technical leader to move into these roles. But whatever your background is, make sure that you build bridges to the other side of the business, to learn as much as you can and provide as much value as you can to that other side.
Yeah, because my next question I had was, what role does non-technical people play? But you kind of answered that, haven't you?
Sure. So their role is just as important as the one that technical people play. Non-technical people are the ones that are, that are seeing the engine room day in and day out. When it takes longer to process a customer request, when you don't have the answer, when you need to ask 5 people, when you need to review information yourself. So where technology stakeholders can help is raise that awareness for what can software, what can technology do today, right? There are a couple different patterns that we already talked about if it comes to generative AI, but then really together think about how can we actually do this better and differently. Are all of these steps in this process still needed? Are there some that we can cut out because somebody 10 years ago thought that was a great idea, but it's no longer necessary? And then what can we automate as part of this, and how can AI help us make better decisions?
And what about it wouldn't be a discussion about AI without ethics, but I guess that's where you were talking earlier on about making sure AI is being used for the right things.
Yeah, that's so critically important, because we do have the responsibility and I mean that in every sense of the word. As people who build software, we do have a responsibility to make sure that the software we provide makes fair decisions. It's just because if we build software that affects all of us and that should serve all of us, we also need to make sure that it, makes decisions or proposals in that same way. And while I would say a lot of times there are good intentions behind incorporating AI in a product, we've also seen over the years where this doesn't always work so well. For example, in 2018, Amazon publicly stated, hey, we've built a resume screening tool to look at resumes and CVs and assess who are candidates that our recruiters should reach out to and do a personal screening or a personal interview with. Well, what Amazon found was that the algorithm was biased more towards men from certain Ivy League schools, because typically, again, based on the data that the model has been trained on, typically people who have flourished in their careers at Amazon were male, had attended certain schools, but that doesn't mean that that is a fair decision and a fair suggestion.
Yeah.
Right, for everybody else. And there are other examples like that. So it's important to consider not only the first order impacts, if you will, but also second and third order impact. What does it mean if a system all of a sudden recommends candidates? Who are we missing? Are we really getting a diverse pool of candidates? How can we make sure that we maybe reintroduce some diversity? And again, is it even part of our culture? Do we want to treat everybody as a number before they even get into the door? Probably not. So I think there are some decisions leaders need to make, but again, bias is one of the critical points as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Disadvantaging large parts of the population.
Andreas, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about AI and how companies can bring AI into the organization. I've certainly learned loads, so appreciate it. Where can people find you?
Perfect. So you can find me on intelligence-briefing.com and on LinkedIn. Follow me there as well. I'm top voice on the platform. I work with organizations to help them create their AI strategy, roadmap of AI capabilities they should roll out to the business, aligned with business strategy. And lastly, help teams learn how can we actually use AI and where are things moving.
And do you want to hold your book up again so people
Yes,
can...
absolutely. And
there's your book, AI Leadership Handbook, which you can get on Amazon, I'm assuming.
Exactly. Pretty much anywhere where you can get books as paperbacks, as digital copies, or as audiobooks as well.
And Beth and Paul, thank you so much for your comments as well. Andreas, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights and your expertise today. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.